Hi, everybody. Program hasn't started yet. We're waiting for my partner. Here he is. Okay, let's get you on, Ibrahim. There you go. There you go.
Yep.
All right. Can you hear me? Hold
Yep.
on. I got to put these on. Okay. Talk to me for a minute. Let's get this straight.
Can you hear me?
Loud and clear. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. All right. I thought in the 2 or 3 minutes before we start the program, there might be some people that are already on. I'm sitting in my basement in Northwest Denver. The realtors call it the Highlands, but I still call it the North Side. It's named for a long time. Ibrahim, where are you?
I'm sitting at the table, the dining table in my reading area in Dearborn, Michigan, or Detroit, Michigan.
All right. So one of us is in Denver. The other is in Dearborn, Michigan. And just to tell those that are listening, this is the second in a series of programs that we hope to make regular. We're still working on a number of details, but tonight we had a real breakthrough because we came up with a title for our series. Could you tell the audience where the title came from?
Yes, we were discussing this, and I talked to my children. I said, "Look, this is what we're going to do." So there was some brainstorming taking place, and finally they came up with this idea.
Right, and so the title of our series is going to be "The United States: Talking Peace, Promoting War."
Oh,
We
United States, the way they put it, United States, is they said U.S. does it again.
U.S. does it again. Yes, yes, yes. Sorry, U.S. does it
U.S. does it
again.
again.
Talking
Talking
peace,
peace, promoting war.
and that will be our theme for some time until we can change the theme to the U.S. does it again. Talking peace, promoting peace.
Yeah, for the first time.
Yes, yes, yes. But that's down the line. All right. Well, it's just about the beginning of our time. Tonight, the subject matter that we have at hand is the same one that we had in our first program, and that is looking at the possibility of the United States rejoining what's referred to as the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, known here in the United States simply as the Iran nuclear deal. We entitled this particular program by the Biden administration Diddles on Iran nuclear deal, a discussion, and that's what we're going to have. So let's begin and get right into it. Ibrahim, this is really a very kind of a strange moment in a way, and it's strange in the sense that we're getting contradictory messages coming from Washington, D.C. concerning the Biden administration's commitment to and willingness or interest in returning to the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action. One commentator said, quote, is there more room? There's more room for optimism than pessimism because too much is at stake for both sides to risk losing what may be the last opportunity to revive an agreement that so squarely advances their interests and security. This comes from the Quincy Institute Vice President Trita Farsi. He argues. Now, puts a positive spin on it, or is the picture somewhat darker? And I want to add here that, quite frankly, that looking at this, and we have followed this issue really since 2013. Very, very carefully. We're supporters of the agreement, and certainly we would love to see the United States re-enter the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action and accept its stipulations. Of course, accepting the stipulation on all sides, but we're worried. And our concern is that the administration, while mouthing support for the agreement, is doing what it can to undermine the process and is basically trying to strangle it. All the signs suggest that it's not serious about returning to the agreement. So, Ibrahim, what is the essence of this agreement? Why don't we start there? You start there, and we can talk about it, and then come back into what's happening today.
Yeah, I think. Well, first of all, I would like to say good evening to our listeners.
Oh, yes.
I'm starting with the points or the question. If we were to deconstruct what you just said, there are a number of critical issues that I think I tend to agree. Number one, this is probably the last chance. I tend to agree. This is probably the last chance that the 5+1 on the one side and Iranians on the other side will have to fix this 2015 nuclear deal.
Ibrahim, could you explain who the five are, the 5+1, what that is, for those listeners that are unfamiliar with this?
It's the 5 veto members at the Security Council, which is United States, United Kingdom, France, Russia, and Germany. Russia and China, and the other +1, at least, if not 2 or 3, it was the European and Germany together. But that's debatable because there were a number of other behind-the-scene countries that were working at the same time to prolong the issue. But certainly, if this agreement were to fall apart, and this is the last chance that anyone will have to get something similar to it organized. The Iranians have made it clear, and I believe the Europeans already know this. There was also a point made that, yes, we have to be hopeful, but at the same time, all the signs clearly indicate that despite the narrative during the electioneering that we are going to go back and to the 2015, and contrary to what Trump did in 2018, unfortunately, the current administration is putting so many conditions. Although United States was the one who withdrew in 2018, and naturally we would expect United States to return, they are making it conditional for Iran to let go and come back to the agreement, while they were not the one who moved away from it. They moved away from it under Chapter 36 of that agreement that clearly gave them the right that if they were to understand that there is some kind of violation from other signatories, there are necessary steps that they can take. And Jawad Zarif, in an interview, made it clear that we went through every single step that the Chapter 36 allowed us, and we ultimately found that the Europeans were not fulfilling their part, particularly the United States is not fulfilling their part. But you also ask, Rob, as far as what was the intended reason for the whole thing. The Washington Post, I'm reading this, Washington Post full text of the Iran nuclear deal. The accord will end decades of economic sanction against Iran in exchange for restriction on its nuclear program. So it was quite clear, everybody knew that there was a degree of exchange is going to take place. United States and the Europeans would remove all the sanctions on Iran, both economically, politically, socially, and everything else. And Iran would be allowed to start taking its own position within at least the region, if the not world economy and political situation. But the preface to the agreement made it clear that states clearly in the preface that Iran reaffirms that which will ensure that Iran's nuclear program will be exclusively peaceful and mark a fundamental shift in their approach to it. They anticipated that full implementation of this will positively contribute to the regional and international peace. That
Right.
was the preface to the whole agreement. But unfortunately, what happened after the agreement, Iran soon found out that this agreement is a one-way traffic. Somehow, I remember at the time, there were a number of Iranian parliamentarians publicly talked about that we have been fooled and tricked.
Why was that?
Because neither Obama was prepared to implement the conditions, nor the Europeans. If United States was not prepared to implement it fully, the Europeans were not prepared to do that either.
So specifically, in this agreement, part of the agreement, a big part of the agreement was for the Iranians was in exchange for limiting their nuclear energy program, that the United States would lift sanctions. And immediately after the agreement was signed, what happened? The United States imposed more sanctions.
Exactly. Not only Obama administration did not remove any sanctions, and that was the reason why the Iranian parliamentarians talked the way they did.
Yeah.
They said, look, if the ink, as they say, as the person said, the ink on the paper is not dry yet.
I want to add one thing here, that we have a senator here in Colorado, Michael Bennet. And Michael Bennet, first of all, he supported seemingly enthusiastically the 2015 agreement and for the United States to get on board. But immediately thereafter, he was one of the senators who introduced the legislation calling for more sanctions.
Yes.
So I wasn't alone, but that was,
that counters not only the spirit of the agreement, but the words of the agreement.
Yes.
Because the words of the agreement makes it clear that Iran would limit its nuclear activities in exchange for removal of sanction and support from the international body, allowing it to get back into economic and political everything else. Particularly was critical for the Iranians, the U.S. removal of huge amount of sanctions. So this puts somehow Biden in a tight corner. I don't believe Biden has the backbone to take the bull by the horn and go all the way and remove all the sanctions, hence facilitate the possibility of Iranian return. And in the absence of such a thing, will Iran be prepared to come back in some kind of lukewarm agreement that is not fulfilling the goal and the objectives that the Iranian government had, and particularly the politicians in Iran had for the economic relief and everything else? I don't. Jawad Zarif has made it clear, and the rest.
The Iranian Foreign Minister, Jawad Zarif, yes.
Iranian President Rouhani has said, as well as Ayatollah Khamenei, the so-called leader of the Iranian, of all Iran. So they have made it clear that no way they are going to go back into an agreement, that they will be the one that implement their part while the other party is not going to honor, and they breach every single article in this in the agreement or the drafted agreement. So they don't see, and recently we discussed this point. Scott Ritter talked about there was an article that he had written, and now it's available online. He claims that Obama administration, they went into this agreement to limit the Iranians' nuclear activity. They didn't go into it to honor it themselves.
Right.
That makes it clear. That gives, if you look at facts and figures, the way it unpacked itself after the 2015 agreement, his claim certainly fits with what happened after the agreement during the Obama time.
Yeah.
Trump was very bold and said that he's not going to wait until, say, 10 years or 11 years from now. He wants to renegotiate the whole thing right now. And unfortunately, this is where Biden is seeing himself. The problem is that they are, Biden administration, particularly the Blinken, he talks about gives inaccurate information about Iranian position with regard to breaking out in 3 months or something like this. It's totally false.
Right. There's a couple things here that I want to add. First, we both are quite familiar with the technical aspects of this agreement. Right now, what's disturbing from the technical point of view are two things. First of all, the difficulty that this administration will have in removing the sanctions, which is an essential part of the agreement. The second thing, what we're seeing are moves. We're hearing it from Netanyahu and from the Israelis, but also from the Saudis. Don't be in such a rush. Yes, you can deal with this, i.e., trying to delay the implementation of the agreement, which in this case would kill it. But I want to take this discussion to another level because, yes, the technical stuff, there's all this, it gets complicated, people get lost. What really is the essence of this agreement politically? The essence of the agreement is to normalize the relationship between the United States and Iran. And what does normalization mean? Well, one part of normalization, definitely, again, is ending sanctions. And we have to understand, the term sanctions does not sound like war. It sounds like something less. But actually, sanctions in the world in which we live, in a world in which war is not just dropping bombs or sending soldiers, but it's also ideological, it's also economic. And as part of this program of hybrid warfare, sanctions is very much an act of war.
It is considered, sanction is considered to be an instrument
of warfare.
Yeah.
Yes, and there's a model and basically what sanctions do is it starves a country, it chokes a country. And the model for that is the Nazi siege of Leningrad. It's a siege. So that's the first point about normalization. The second point is normalization really means entering into what I suppose we could call normal economic relations between Iran and the rest of the world. Yes.
Rob, this is the critical issue.
Yes.
Because what happens between Iran and United States, as far as normalization of political relationship, etc., it's neither here or there when it comes to the prevailing political reality of zero-sum game that exists in the region.
Right.
Every other opponent, whether the Israelis, whether it's the Saudis or anybody else, what they are afraid is not for exchange of ambassadors between Washington and Tehran. That's neither here nor there. What they are afraid that Iran, by normalization, allowing Iran to open the door to, or normalization with Iran would open the door into political recognition and economic recognition, allowing Iran to become stronger in the region.
Yes.
The strength that Iranians would gain within the context of zero-sum game, unfortunately. And by the way, Mousavian, that he was one of the negotiators, recently wrote an article and alluded to this fact as well, that unfortunately the zero-sum game that exists as a political reality in the region makes it critical, on the one hand, for Iran to be allowed to play its normal role, and the others are very afraid that Iran gets strong at their expenses, because
That's right. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, more
Normalization. No, if frankly, the whole question about the nuclear issue, the more that I've looked at this and studied this tension between the United States and Iran, the nuclear issue is, as they call it, a red herring. It's really
yes.
it's really about what would happen, how normalization would strengthen the Iranian position, and anything that strengthens the Iranian position weakens the dictate that Israel, Saudi Arabia, and the United States have in the region. So that's our take. And there's another thing, Ibrahim, because the United States it's really caught in a kind of contradiction. On the one hand, it has been unable since 1979. There's nothing new about any of this, to overthrow the Iranian government militarily. They cannot do it. They cannot do it. We're living in a world of what's that term where one military power is stronger than the other, but the other
Asymmetrical.
That's right. We're living in an era of asymmetrical warfare. Meaning what? Of course, the United States, along with Israel and Saudi Arabia, militarily they're much stronger. But Iran has developed, given its capabilities, military possibilities to respond in such a way that if such a war broke out, it's not just Iran that would suffer the consequences. What this leads us to is a very simple conclusion, that today there is no military solution to the conflict, no military solution that's going to lead to any kind of progress.
Anybody can take military action. The problem is that once you open this can of worms in the region, it's not going to be contained between Iran and United States. We have seen Iran's capability, and we have constantly discussed about this in the past, Iran's capability and the desire and the will to use these military.
If they have to. Yes.
The gloves are out. So I don't, on the one hand, you are right. Biden administration understand, as Trump did, by the way, when the biggest drone was shot down by Iran.
The U.S. drone.
The US swallowed it.
Yes.
For the first time in its history that somebody shoots your drone down and you don't say anything, and they bombed your barrack in Iraq, you still swallowed it because you don't want to escalate, because you understand that the war with Iran is totally different from war with Afghanistan, with war with Iraq, or anyone.
Yes. So
it's going to engulf the whole region. They understand it.
Yeah, and if this is the case, this explains their maximum pressure campaign.
Exactly.
That they're using every alternative they can other than warfare. But
Robert, what's his name? The person who was appointed to go and take the Robert Malley.
Oh, Malley, yeah.
Yes, the appointee, he made it clear in his comment a few days ago that the maximum pressure, Trump's maximum pressure, unfortunately for Trump, has failed.
Yes, it has failed. It has failed.
By the way, Sir Anthony Parson used to be the ambassador, British ambassador in Tehran from 1974, I believe, to 1979. And then he became British UK representative at the United Nations at the Security Council seat. He has a memoir. He said, I repeatedly informed the Americans that sanctions are not going to work with the Iranians because you have put them on the sanction from 1979. They've got used to it.
Right.
And yet the Trump administration kept piling up sanction, and Pompeo kept adding more sanctions.
All right. Yeah.
It has failed.
Yeah. There's one more thing I want to add before we kind of get into our final comments there. And we talked about this on our monthly program on KGNU, Hemispheres Middle East Dialogues, that's produced by Jim Nelson. And that is the United States, in its official documents, considers Iran a threat, an enemy. It has given Iran in this particular situation, before you have before you enter into a major agreement, there's usually what's called confidence building measures. But it's a contradiction. On the same time, you're calling Iran a threat and providing very few to no confidence building measures, that you're talking about negotiating for peace. And this is a problem that we've seen not only from, if you like, the administrations, be they Republican or Democrat, but we hear this kind of talk also even among the peace movement, among the left in this country. We have to deal with the Iranian threat, and until we kind of deconstruct that notion of the Iranian threat, I see this kind of momentum for peace.
Yeah. Yes, we discussed this in the last meeting that we had,
right.
As you explained. Unfortunately, that is the shortcoming of the liberal and the left movement in the United States, that it has not been able to construct its own narrative.
Right.
That reflects its own ideology, reflects on its own values, and borrows narratives that are steeped in totally different understanding and lens of the world. This constantly pays lip service to Iranian threat. Iran has never been a threat. You have to construct this. And even now, Blinken, or the new Secretary of State, constantly uses the same language. Iran is a threat. Iran is a threat, and the threat is imminent. We heard this in 2002, 2003 with Saddam. Saddam is a threat, and if we don't contain it, we have a mushroom cloud in New York.
And then we heard it about Libya in 2011. Exactly. So it's not a new idea, but it's been pounded repeatedly.
Yes, the narrative is the same.
Ibrahim,
they're now using it against Iran.
Okay.
And I tend to agree with you. This is why Iranian leaders, because they don't trust United States, they see and they indicate that coming of United States or paying lip service to 2015 agreement, it's not going to be here or there.
Okay, so here we are. We've given a kind of I think an objective, but I wouldn't say real optimistic assessment of the possibilities of this agreement, of the United States returning, and for the agreement to take off again. So, Ibrahim, where's the hope? Where's the hope today? Where's the hope?
We should be hopeful. We should be hopeful because, as you indicated right at the beginning, by expressing what Parsi has said, this is the last chance.
Right.
We should be hopeful. So what people should do, use this reality in forcing their representative. Let's not allow this opportunity to be missed. By taking the relationship and looking at it purely in an ideological sense, we are not going to go anywhere. Let's look at facts and figures and go back. But once we go back, it has to be with the full commitment to the implementation of it, not just make lip service to it and then impose more sanctions.
I want to add one more thing, and that is on the hope side of things, and that is what I have seen in these past year or so has been a flowering of a peace movement here in this country, including in the great state of Colorado, for the United States to return to the 2015 agreement, to honor its stipulations. And we actually have a coalition here. It's been active. I try to help it out. I'm impressed with its work. It's sincere in its efforts. It calls itself the Coloradans for Middle East Diplomacy and Peace. And I've noticed elsewhere in the country that forums and movements calling on the United States to return to the agreement. We haven't seen this level of peace activity in this country for some time, and that includes, if I'm not mistaken, a letter written by the imams of is it Michigan or Detroit area to the President of the United States?
Dearborn.
Dearborn. Can you talk just a little bit about the content of that letter? Because it's really a parallel to what we've done here in Colorado.
Yeah, the imams in Dearborn realized the role that this community played in literally giving Michigan to Biden. If it wasn't for this collective vote that the Muslim community gave to Biden, Biden would not have been able to get Michigan. So they are using this opportunity that, look, allow us to work with you, and reminding him. The letter literally is in two parts. First, a little bit of congratulation for his victory,
Right.
but then it moves into the main detail. Number one on the list is asking, at the time it was president-elect, but now is the president, to understand the critical nature of 2015 and the preface to 2015 that was as a way to establishment of peace and tranquility in the region. Let's move forward, and we are ready to work with him if he calls upon us.
That's really nice.
Yeah.
So look, Ibrahim, we said we're going to try to limit these interviews to a half an hour. It's a half an hour. I think that's a really nice point to end on, that there's a movement in this country. We got a lot of work to do. It's an uphill struggle, but it's one that's worth it.
I think together we.
Oh,